Thanks for joining us. Welcome to another episode of Manufacturing Growth Talks. If you're unfamiliar, what we do is we meet with other colleagues in the manufacturing sector, and we, take a path through memory lane, take a walk through memory lane, and talk about their experiences, the lessons they've learned, the challenges they've had, and draw out incredible insights that are useful to you guys as manufacturing executives to apply into your businesses. And so today, I am joined by Steve Ramel. He has been, he's had an incredible journey. He's had experience with a variety of industries and companies in things like unrelated to manufacturing, service, things like waste management and recycling. And so I think he'll have a lot of lessons, a lot of insights that'll benefit us as listeners. So please join me and welcome me, Steve, in joining us. Steve, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Glad to be here. Glad to connect with you and your audience as well. And I appreciate you having me on your program.
Absolutely. It was a little bit of work in the making, but we're finally here. We're going to make it happen, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
So the first question I have for you, Steve, is can you, at a high level, just describe what's been your journey? Where have you worked? What kind of roles you've held in the different businesses you've been thus far? And so people have an understanding of what's your background, and of course, which includes manufacturing. But I know that there's other areas that you've been part of.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta say, I've been very fortunate to have a very diverse background, which some people may or may not like, but there are consistencies within the industries and the roles that you have. I have been business analyst role. I've been technologist. I've been a CFO. I've been a COO. I've been a president. I've been in sales and setting up sales and marketing. So my mind has always been is, how do I continually learn about things, and how do I work within a team? And I've been fortunate enough. Usually my attitude is leaders pluck you out of the crowd, or maybe leaders take you out of a position that you're maybe too comfortable and they think you can do more. So I kind of really learned that kind of later on in my career. But I was completely surprised when I was with Waste Management, and I was a business analyst in technology, implementing ERP system and collecting requirements from all the customers around the U.S. as well as employees to design this system. And I was plucked out by the CEO to say, we're going to re-engineer this $3 billion entity, and you're going to lead the re-engineering of it. I'm thinking like, well, everybody gets a chance like this. This is great. Yeah, for sure. I was getting my MBA at the time, and I thought that was normal, but it made sense to me, and it kind of gave me my first entree into what great leadership is, how they communicate, how they coach, mentor, how they look at cross-functionally between employee, customer, shareholder, technology, process, and profitability. Those things are all tough to kind of digest.
Yes.
And I was very fortunate to be part of that and learn quite a bit. And I later on parlayed that into opportunities at GE Energy, GE Capital, GE Healthcare. And it was all consistent to me, even though the faces changed, the product changed, and maybe the market changed. And this goes through later on in my career up to this point, is how do I delight the customer profitably? There's probably three or four different themes in there, and each one of them have subsets in them. And yeah, for sure, the customer might use different words. However, money looks the same unless you're going through a foreign exchange, a currency exchange that way. But there's partners out there. There's no one who can do things by themselves anymore. You're going to need partners in every single aspect, including a coach at the C levels is not a bad thing to have, because
Absolutely.
otherwise you're looking in the mirror.
Yeah. Oh, let me ask you about that opportunity at Waste Management. I know, looking at your background, you talk about a turnaround of a culture. I don't know if that was the same at the same time of that opportunity that that leader gave you, but can you tell us about that experience? What was the state of things? What did you find? What were the challenges, and what was the outcome at the end of that adventure?
So the company, a traditional company, great company, a lot of homegrown processes, a lot of homegrown, this is how we do it, the mentality of, well, this is the way we've done it all the time. Well, the market was changing, and the market was reallocating kind of all the recycling instead of disposing, which was where the money is made.
Okay.
So we quickly had to adjust, and we quickly had to be customer service centric. So you can imagine the waste industry at that time wasn't exactly customer centric, customer nice, customer friendly. So we had to design how we have an inside sales team, how we have customer service, and each of the customer service reps had to see what each customer was doing from Seattle to Miami. If they were a national account, we treat them like a national account. There's a great book that we learned from Sewell Cadillac in Dallas. And
before, yes.
they are the benchmark for customer service and customer satisfaction. So I would advise, I don't know if Carl Sewell's books are still out there, but I use this book in my mind, and we also trained hundreds of people at Waste Management back in the day on this method. And that really broke the ice. You know, as soon as you bring in a third party that says, there's maybe a better way to do it, and then you bring in customer testimony. So I went out and I videoed customers, and customer came back and he said, I'm the customer. I want to be treated like the customer. You show this to, 2,000 people. Well, whoa. I mean, that's a slap in the face. So yes. When I kind of learned how important voice of the customer was.
That's so incredible you say that, because when you have a culture traditionally and it's been embedded for so long, it's almost like it gets frozen in time to me, because everybody's so behind it and so ingrained in their minds and their habits that it can be challenging, and definitely need to inject somewhat of an outside view, maybe a contrarian perspective against what they believe to be true, and just not changing it to get that reaction, to get that change.
Yep. And comes with that, you're designing performance KPIs, you're putting those in place, but at the same time you're giving everyone the accountability and the skill capability and new skills of either technology, process thinking to internalize that, to make their own change. And then they start to bring other people in. Everybody is a leader. Everybody has that capability. If we want to break the mold, we break the mold. And there's that horizon. Everyone's got a different time horizon on that.
Funny you mentioned that. I was going to ask you, give me the horizon, the time frame. And before you answer, let me tell you why I'm asking. A lot of times, leaders, of course, especially manufacturing, have a lot of pressure for results now, regardless of having the right team or having the right culture or the readiness of the organization for change. Results now, earnings, sales, growth, market share, all the financials that we always talk about. How were you able to balance that, and how long did it take for this change to take hold and really get results, and just juggling both those dynamics happening at the same time?
Yeah, so culture is much stronger than strategy, and culture makes or breaks situations. So a lot of things were going on at that time frame. A lot of things economically as well are going on right now.
Right.
And so a lot of the companies I've been involved in, as I take a look at and say, are you changing? Are you offering education on a regular basis to your teammates, your colleagues, your employees? Are you offering a roundtable discussions where people can talk about things that are going on or should be going on? So you start as a culture, you want to be able to engage that. You want to be able to turn your pyramid upside down a little bit and give power to individuals on the line, or give that power to individuals who have a direct customer interface. Classic example at Waste Management is the drivers always saw the customer every single day. Yeah, you got your sales reps, you got your executives, you've got middle management, you've got events, planned events, but the drivers saw the customer every day. So what we said is, how do we capture that voice of the customer through the drivers? And we incentivize the drivers to improve sales, incentivize them if they brought in revenue. Instead of a pickup twice a week, we advise you to bring up 3 times. Do you need a larger roll off? So this information that the driver, every day, they saw their customer every day. So this really a ground up opportunity to change the organization, because that voice of the customer is powerful, and it sometimes doesn't transcend all the way up, and it sometimes doesn't transcend all the way across. So you really have to design those communications meetings, communications protocol, and make it top of mind to talk about, I'm the customer, treat me like the customer. So
that's good. I mean, you made me think, like, you didn't focus on trying to affect or manipulate the numbers, the results directly. You went to the source of everything, the customer, the people that are closest to the customer, and then let that kind of cascade or permeate through the entire organization. I commend you on that. But how long did it take, and how do you keep the confidence and the patience, because it's going to take a little bit of time before that really becomes the new way that people function and operate and think, when you have pressures to get results now?
Yep, for sure. I think it's time. You got to pay attention to the market timing. Every industry has their revenue cycles. So if you go, education's a true bell curve, not to use that anomaly or that similarity, but you got to know your revenue, your speed of revenue, speed to revenue. And you have to be able to understand, well, I got to prepare in November, December, January. And I know revenue is going to start really ticking up in March. I better start to offer education. I better start to offer roundtables. I better collect my employee and colleagues' thoughts, ideas, and put something in action. Put it in action, because we're all going to say, I mean, we've all been there. Hey, I get to voice wait a second. Wait, this is a trick. Because in the past 20 years, it tricks people out and it's used against me. So I get it. I get it. But for me, you are really a culture zealot. You really want to open that door, because there's usually who are fulfilling customers' expectations that you may never meet or you may never see. You have to give that avenue. So, for example, Waste Management was 22 months, but we had coaches and mentors at key facilities. We had process owners at facilities and at regions, and we met once a month with an entire region and walked through where we're at. You had a visible project plan, you had a visible goal, and you had an outline for process, people, profitability, and customer satisfaction was number one. If you didn't
That's
come
correct.
in with a customer sat metric, the meeting is over. It's ended. Come back with that customer. And that transcends through GE as well. You walk into any General Electric meeting at the time, and you didn't mention who the customer was right in the first 5 minutes of the agenda, it's kind of a tough conversation to say, it's great, you're a great person, but we're going to end the meeting now because we don't know who the customer is. I have no idea. So
Wow, that talk about a culture shift in the way people think and act.
yeah.
From where it started, not customer centric, to now the customer has to be present, ever present in every conversation and everywhere that we're having discussions. So after you transitioned out of waste management and you completed that culture change, I think your next stop was G Capital, and I read you created a strategy for new market and penetrating the market. That sounds to me like an undertaking. Can you share about that? What was the situation and how did you proceed? And hopefully some nuggets for people to understand now that we're close to the strategy cycle. How do they develop that in their businesses?
Yeah, so real fortunate that at the time GE Capital had a very focused effort on the customer, and there was no discrepancy of who that customer was, and that was kind of reiterated a lot. So that made it easier for me. The other thing is everyone was educated on change management or process thinking. So my recommendation now, and it's never too late, to make sure your culture is informed of those three things. Who is the customer? Have your organization sit down. Who is the customer? Have your organization say, what is the process to fulfill the customer? And what does successful profitability look like? And you're going to get a lot of discrepancies because hard to hold the line, but you have to constantly work at that and prove it out. So I was fortunate enough to walk into a situation like that, but at the same time, there's a process for growth. There's a process for everything. And
Exactly.
I mean, we all encounter like, well, process baloney. I'm not going to put flip charts together. I'm not going to put sticky notes on the wall. But realistically, every day outside of work, we think in processes. We're human beings. We go on vacation, right? Well, where are we going on vacation, honey? And how many bags do I have to pack? Well, who's going to get the tickets? How are we going to get there? What are we going to do? That's all process thinking. So
Exactly.
you bring that into the work environment too. But the key was, how do I do my voice of the customer? Through surveys to the customer, through data that's available through associations, that's available through customer aggregators as well, industry aggregation data. But you have to trust those individuals. You have to walk through. Sometimes you just can't buy a report. And there's a few providers out there that may overinflate numbers. So you have to be careful of that. But to get that information, listen to your bank. Everyone has a bank note or everyone has a relationship with a bank. Listen to your bank. Have your banker come in and say, hey, how's the industry doing? So I had to bring in these external parties and look for consistencies and look for anomalies and put that in a diagram so we can discuss it throughout the entire organization, top down, bottom up, whatever, however you refer to it. But now you're a team. Now it's not, oh, well, because I'm the C level, I never had this. I said, leave your title at the door, because now we've got to we want to accelerate and we want to grow. So this is when I ask people, hey, can you get involved in this? Can you help us grow? So I might have one-on-one meetings. I might have group meetings, but out of those meetings, I have a meeting every week to specifically talk about that. So you're starting to change the organization and make sure that muscle is strengthening in the organization, and people feel comfortable talking about it. So
I think it would be, I guess in my mind, it served two purposes: gather intelligence about the market, and of course, that's going to lead into strategy on how to approach that market, but also sharing with the people internally. What are your intentions? Do you align with them? Get ready. This is coming. Do you agree or disagree? And so I think it serves multiple purposes, and very wise of you to collect all of that information from different perspectives so you can formulate your strategy on penetrating that market. And so, can you talk about that transition to where you're saying, okay, I gathered all this insight, I gathered these trends and so forth. How did you translate that into here's how we'll go forth and approach the market?
So this is when I aligned with executive sponsors, and these executive sponsors were engaged in collection of data, collection of communications with employees and customers. And now I say, okay, I'd like you to be responsible for inventory control or procurement. And please work with your team to determine what next year or 2 years look. It's very hard to go beyond 3 years. Very hard in today's environment.
Right.
Very hard. And so I asked them, do you need a third-party facilitator? Because sometimes you come in with bias. You come in with a path of least resistance. You come in with, well, is my boss going to like that? Yeah. At the same time, you are extricating yourself as a C-level. You're just you're removing yourself because you've participated in that discovery phase. You fulfilled that discovery phase. You made sure the teams had the resources. You don't know the answer, but you should say before you exit that discovery phase, hey, I don't know the answer to this, but I think we've got enough information and we've got the expertise within these disciplines to design what it might look like. You extricate yourself, because every time you parachute in, it's not a good thing. Everyone forgets everything. They look at you out of the corner of the eye and say, am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Just let it naturally happen. Everybody's very smart. They survived in this life long enough to do that. They've taken risks as well. Let them do their job. So, but now they have the tools. You can put a flag in the discovery phase and declare victory.
Yeah, I tell people, you're gonna hats when you're working, but in this environment, you need to take that hat off, and you're just a business leader here, and it's all these business minds just trying to determine what's the best path forward to generate income and grow the business and so forth.
Yep.
So I think after that, your next stop was Amex, and you did some M&A integration, which I feel presents its own challenges with systems and roles and cultures. So tell us about that situation and what you came across and how that unraveled.
Yeah. So at that point in my career, I have a little bit more confidence, and I've been educated on new product development, new market development, process thinking, and American Express, great company, obviously top 3 brands in the world. And this was an attempt to dive into mergers and acquisitions and maybe change a little bit of American Express's card offering or service offerings. So a lot of projects were just kind of sitting on the table for a while. And so I was tasked by the finance organization to pull people together and create solutions. So between my background in Six Sigma, operations, finance, I was able to leverage my facilitation skills as well. So what are those functional experts that should be on the team? Have everyone realize what kind of hole there might be in, or inability to execute because of competing priorities, or maybe some of those individuals or their bosses don't agree with the situation and have kind of put it off. Well, the good thing is now we have to establish executive sponsorship. And then you have to be disciplined like a good project manager would be to determine what your problem is, what your why is. So we hear a lot of NFL players say that now, what's your why? And stick to it. And for me as a leader, I like to get the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I know corporate politics, and I know, everybody's got to maintain a role, a job, and et cetera. But you have to be in an environment that is safe. You have to be able to speak your mind without any ramification. And that's tough. I mean, you get two people in a room and you start to have politics. So that's tough. So as a facilitator, I'm okay taking that risk because I want to make sure that the end result is what we all desire to have. And there's going to be bumps and bruises and along the way. But I think establishing that trust is important. If you're going to use that information against people to improve yourself or improve your friend in the organization, shame on you. But change management has to be a trusted role. So a lot of these projects at American Express were, the people are incredible. I mean, it's a great honor to work there. They solve many problems, and they fulfill. Amex is probably the number one organization that has a focus on customers. They are, I don't know how many decades in a row now of their customer service and JD Power Awards, et cetera. So it's nice to work in that environment because people will go the extra mile. They will say the extra mile, and they'll try to accomplish because they see as a whole that you're rewarded for being customer service centric.
So it sounds like, contrary to waste management, this must have been so more of a less challenging integration. What was the business that that was acquired that you integrated in that instance?
So there was a business that was acquired in China, and it was to enter into the Chinese market. So there was already a technology and a credit card platform there. We just had to integrate. I should say just integrate, but that's a hard thing to do.
I was asking, does it seem like a more swifter or more a positive experience when it comes to integrating it compared to your waste management experience you discussed earlier? Tell us about that. Like, what was the business that you acquired and integrated in Amex?
Yeah, it was a acquired company in China that had a credit card platform as well. So you imagine different cultures, different ways of reporting where money travels, KYC, which is an acronym for Know Your Customer. So you had jurisdictions, Chinese government jurisdictions, U.S. jurisdictions that had to be adhered to. So you really had to kind of know a little bit of SEC rules, know your customer rules, a lot of risk management, reporting recognition, and culture, meaning I call a credit card this and somebody says it's plastic. So maybe as simple as that. But if you don't have the vocabulary, it becomes very difficult.
So I guess it boils down to the same thing you said earlier about understanding your market, your people, your culture, your all about the customer and how to service them appropriately, delighting them while still remaining profitable.
Yes. Yeah.
Very good. And so I guess, so of course you mentioned a lot of things there. Were you able to mesh those two together, and what was the outcome of that?
Yeah, so we were able to mesh those two together, We completed it. We originally targeted 12 months. We completed it in 7 months.
Very good.
Diligent project management, diligent communications on status, who's your executive sponsors to continue to get support, and manage risk. And risk meaning internal, risk meaning external, but also comes down to, having the right people on the team as well.
Earlier today, he was telling me about Patrick Lencioni's acronym. It's a book he's got out there about understanding who's the visionary, who's the doer and the thinker and the planner. So alluding to that.
Yeah.
So your next stop, Hudson Global, I saw that you integrated 60 global companies. So we just talked about one integration. I can imagine 60 companies being integrated. So if I said earlier that would have been an undertaking, this must have been just a mammoth undertaking for you. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was a mammoth undertaking, and it's, probably definition of success is different to everybody that was involved, for sure. You had to kind of get to a commonality with different countries, Australia, Europe,
also
US.
International as well.
Yes.
Interesting.
So really it comes down to process, and what is that most basic? I mean, everybody's got, I'm going to change the world type of concept, or I'm going to make sure my part of the world changes for the better. But the consistency is, who's the customer? And the customer usually is consistent around the world. Their characteristics are very similar in that situation around the world.
So you're saying in that situation, but not necessarily in general terms, or are you saying that's been your experience throughout different markets and different companies, different products and services?
It's been pretty consistent between building materials and manufacturing, garbage or waste, financial services. You just have to listen to what that commonality is, and it's pretty consistent.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
how do you integrate 60 companies, Steve? Where do you start even?
So basically you start with who is your customer? Is it the employer or the contract employer, or is it the person who's being placed? And it's probably two of them. So you say, I need to bring these two supply chain situations together, and I also need to capture information so I look professional, I can act professional, I can bill, I can invoice. So it comes down to really quick is, what two systems, order entry systems, do I need to capture information in? And it's super hard. It's super hard. I mean,
I bet it was.
Thank God I had some, a great leader in Australia, who is really, really good and visionary and did a great job of kind of leading and helping me be that executive sponsor across the entire organization. Also in Europe. So there are a lot of consistencies from that executive sponsor. So you think you can go fast, but in an individual's mind, you go fast, but as an organization, depending on the size, man, it looks like it's going slow.
Feels like nothing's moving.
Yes, but stuff is moving. I mean, you are moving a mountain. As we talked about at GE, is you move an aircraft carrier in a harbor.
Yeah.
But you have to make sure that your communications plan is bulletproof. You have to make sure that there's a consistency and everybody had input on what milestone dates in your plan are. But
what the critical path is, right?
Never lose the buyer who happens to be the company or the entity, and never lose your resources, which is people like us who are looking or need to be placed or fulfill a certain goal, you have to put them at the center.
Let me ask you this, guy. I think it's a question listeners might have, but when you're recruiting or trying to find those executive sponsors, how do you think about when you're looking for them, when you're recruiting them, when you're trying to plant that seed in the mind so they do a good job of that role so that people understand, okay, if I'm going to think about who are these people that I can, because it's so critical to have the right people. It just thought to ask a question, how do we find these people and how do we set them up for success?
So usually, it's brand new to an organization. The concept's been around a long time, but it could be brand new. So what does an executive sponsor do? So you might have to start with that definition to your board. You might have to start it to your C-level roundtable or your executive group, or you might have to start it at production manager or risk manager, type of level. What does that executive sponsor do? And then you actually have to go through a draft period. You have to go solicit. You have to ask. Maybe you can get to the C-level and say, who would you recommend, that I could work with that could bring these concepts forward and represent the organization for decision making, yes or no. And so you might get some input from the C-level. Usually you do. And you try to work with them and, woo them. You have to sell them. You have to sell them because it's a risk.
Sure.
It's a professional risk. So you have to sell it, and then you have to give them a role responsibility and just reiterate with them. And then you have to have a meeting with the impacted organization, the parties, or internal or external, and say, I'm drafting Joe as an executive sponsor, or I'm drafting Sally as an executive sponsor who their responsibility is this. And then kind of go from there. So
are these all external, or do you ever go internal?
For the most part, it's both. You would love to have a customer advocate, someone who, a customer who's very passionate about something that you're trying to solve for. And to pair them up with an internal executive sponsor, usually internally, I don't think there's too many internal C-level, E-level, management level, middle management, non-management, who are going to say the customer doesn't know anything. I know the best.
Oh, no, right. No, of course.
So having that external customer advocate is key as well.
Very good. So in closing for that endeavor, 60 companies, what was the outcome of that? How long did it take you?
It's probably still going on.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
So you can establish the ground rules and establish the plan, establish some key processes in what I'll call order entry. But then to kind of translate that in, you've got to make sure you've got the technology that's consistent, which is money. You got to make sure you can align to market conditions which are up and down, according to resource planning and resource placement. So the key was to kind of get the organization in check.
Got it. So after that experience, then you went, of all places, we've talked waste management, we've talked capital organizations or financial institutions, and you went to education of all places. You went to Apollo Education, and you had a turnaround with some significant milestones there. Tell us about that experience. What did you walk into and some of the challenges you faced?
Yeah, so education industry is different than other industries. So there's a lot of people, you don't necessarily, you have a product, but it's sometimes it's nebulous when it comes to the product. And maybe you may not have the same discipline to execute as well. But I took the role because I know as a leader, I have to be an educator as well. And I know when I retire, I want to go into education and kind of bring what I learned maybe to a different group of people and teach people on that. So that's kind of one of my long-term goals. But
Very good.
It's to me, it's important to be in education and support that. The education industry is not necessarily into change.
Oh, yes. My wife used to be a school teacher, so I know or have been exposed to that aspect of the industry.
Yeah. But if you can understand the industry, they can be a great partner. So later on, I've Notre Dame, great partner. A lot of kind of local tech colleges, junior colleges, great partners. And I'll go into a little bit, but bringing education into focus of a common goal is not easy. It's not easy. And started small, started doing voice of the customer in Miami, Dallas, Chicago, Gary, Indiana, Las Vegas, Phoenix area. All these are large educational regions. Maricopa,
Sure, of course.
Miami-Dade. So what are they looking for and how do we benefit? And do we have any performance metrics? So there wasn't too many performance metrics, and not internally driven, but more externally driven. So how do we, at least is it safe to say we graduated the student? Is that a performance metric? Is it safe to say, or maybe we need to take it down another level? I got through 3 chapters of math. What does that look like? How do we celebrate? What's success look like?
Right.
So there's a lot of education that has to happen on that side, so that you can achieve what you need to achieve. So it was a smaller organization, about 10 million in revenue, but it was impactful. It was K through 12 math solution. And you have to be receptive to every county or state because they have cycles of contract awards. One could be years,
sure.
one could be 2 years. So,
Well, let me ask you this. You have on your thing that you closed the biggest deal to date for that organization. Can you tell us about that? How did that come about?
I think it came through my prior relationships, prior situation and relationships with this association, and the trust that I had with the association, and that gave us access to 40,000 companies. And
very good.
we designed very slowly and very small scope, but designed a communications education certificate and a which included like providing performance feedback, providing I have a question, boss, and that was to the manufacturing and wholesale distribution industry. So
Okay.
a little bit of change that had to occur in that and support, but we came up with 7 modules. They were $1,000, and in the first pilot we were oversubscribed. We only wanted 35 and we had 200.
Oh, very good. That's a problem to have.
So yes, a lot of big companies came in, and it was really at that time, because of the prior economic situation in 07, 08, 09, a lot of companies got rid of their education programs. So they didn't want the overhead. And then we came in and I said, let's try to supplement this. So we started small. And I point blank did roundtables with CFOs, COOs, and CEOs of companies, publicly and non-publicly traded companies. And I asked them, my last question was, how much are you willing to pay for this? That's okay to ask. I mean, you're designing a new product.
So when you're, yeah, you know that I just got launched into that a few years back. The power of innovation and being open and vulnerable and honest with your market, and now because it's for them. So it's the ultimate, way of validating and making sure you get it right.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't have to be afraid to ask that question, how much you're willing to pay, because you can get 1, 2, 3 years down the road and you're trying to take a dart to how much that price should be and you miss it. Unfortunately, by then you miss the market. I mean, time is not.
Oh, sure.
So,
Oh, sure. I always say and it's been a theme with this conversation, is that understanding market dynamics, the focus of the customer, what's the tendency of the behavior. All of this has a lot to do with human behavior and preferences, and you have to keep connected to that. And sometimes it's challenging, but you have to to survive. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind by the market.
yes, yep.
So you turned up, you closed that big deal. You turned that place around. How was that? What did you accomplish there? At the end of your tenure there.
I think it was fulfilling for me because I learned the education industry. I learned the benefits of it and how to work with it. I ended up working with it in future roles as well. So at the end of the day, a private equity firm bought us, and we moved on. So,
did you partake in the sale? Were you kind of part of the decision? That was okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, no, a different group of people.
I gotcha. Okay, so I know you did some lean consulting, but I really want to finally get to the manufacturing part of your journey. You got to Robert Weed, Building Materials. Tell us about your role there. What came across when you entered? What was the situation, and then how did it progress from there?
Yeah, so it was a transition of leadership to probably new way of thinking and different way, bringing in technology, process thinking, and growth. And so I was brought in as COO, and there was a lot of opportunity there. I mean, manufacturing, there's a lot of change that happens, and there was a lot of change that had to happen. So from a process perspective, from a generating KPI perspective, managing finances differently, I'm coming in with a capital markets background. I'm coming in with different loans, structures. It's kind of unheard of. What are you doing? So a lot of changes had to occur, but where I started was process and aligning it to customers. Classic example. So we were making countertops, and I said, we need to take the cost down. Can we lower the price without telling we're lowering the price? Can we improve margin? So we went through activity-based costing in a very, very simple way, in a Gemba walk. And I said, well, can we pull the customer in? Oh, no, we don't pull the customer in. So I called the customer. They came in and they said, oh, we don't need that part. We don't need that piece on there. Let's say that's $1.25 right off the bat by asking the customer.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yes. So that was incorporated into the manufacturing process, but ask the customer. So that kind of percolated into lean, 5S. A lot of changes happened with that. We did 1,800 changes in 1 year, and a lot of improvement had to occur there. But the key was everybody in the whole organization was interested. It wasn't hard.
Yeah, that's good.
It wasn't hard. As long as you're communicating, you plan it out, you discuss and involve people in the vision. So when I became president, I was fortunate enough to have a 3-day strategic planning session. and I pulled in 2 of our summer interns in that discussion, and I pulled in production, and I pulled in finance, sales. So there was probably about 20 people in this strategic planning session.
So you're talking about, just to illustrate for other people, right? Because it's typically the executive leadership just there for the 2-day retreat. You're talking about putting these 20 people out our next 3 years as part of this team, and just don't worry about your role for 3 days. Is that what you did?
Pretty much. Everybody had some homework to do. So 6 weeks prior to that, everyone had homework to do to say, we've got 5 generations working in our plant. What are the similarities and what are the differences? Because culture is important. So we have to understand,
Of course.
Do we like each other? Do we want to work with each other? Can we tolerate each other?
And how do you pick those folks? Because I would assume they would have to be some special traits or something you saw to pull out of the, let's say, 200 people out on the floor to say, that one is, I want that person in this room. How did you go about picking those folks?
I worked with the production managers. I worked with the leaders of those disciplines at the corporate level. I also was able to see how we reacted to the beginning of COVID and what we did for that. Did I have a lot of hands that were raised? Yes. So it was kind of nice to have that energy and that interest. So that was a positive. But I pretty much, I said to the production managers and organization leaders, I said, bring in people who you think would have knowledge of their particular discipline, and then and they've talked to you about what it could look like. It could be anything from, like, I wish I had red on-off switches versus green. But that means that someone's telling me that they're thinking forward. They're thinking of others. They're thinking of a team. They're looking forward. So I said, try to bring in that. So really have that ownership, and versus being a directive and saying, you're coming to this meeting for 3 days. So,
Right. And so, because I don't see that often, I want to ask you, what did that add to the session, having folks in it?
It was super impactful in a positive way. The most impactful was at the time, because of the change of COVID. What is a 18-year-old going to do for a 50-year-old? What are those generational definitions of each other? So I had the summer interns put together their own presentation and describe what a generation interests are. Now, a lot of that information is out in the, you can Google it, you can read it. And so these summer interns came, and then I had them, what are your interests? What do you like and don't like? I said, you got to be honest with everyone. So they said what they liked and disliked. They go, this is a safe environment. It's okay to say this. We have to figure out how we work together so we can be more efficient. Safety was number one, and communicative to hit goals. So that was probably the most impactful conversation of how do we work together? What are our expectations are as just a natural human being? We grew up with MTV, or we didn't. We have earbuds and we don't. So,
That's awesome.
It's a different thing. So it was super important for the culture to get off on the ground, just off the right foot. So
sounds like you had a lot of the right people already, and they just needed some level of direction, which they also influenced. And where did you guys take that? What did you accomplish in that stop in your journey?
Yeah, so we were able to get to a 3-year plan. We were able to broadcast it to our suppliers around the world. Any new suppliers, we created marketing material to discuss our vision, mission, values, which was important to get to so that we can all have consistent objectives. drafted. KPIs were created, and then a regular plan on when reviews or communications for improvement should occur. That also allowed us to set up weekly, monthly, quarterly meetings. So we didn't overdo it, but we put some structure in place so that we can accomplish some long-term and short-term goals.
Okay, and then your current role or your most recent, you've been doing a lot of reshoring. Tell us about that. What's your focus with this recent role?
Yeah, so it has been because of tariffs and the changes in the government. There's been a lot of changes that occurred to manufacturers and wholesaler distributors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And started to eat into margins. And if you didn't have like the controls in place to control quality, or if you didn't have the right contracts in place, that comes out as well. And if you didn't have the right relationships and trust with your suppliers, either has posed a problem, certainly in today's government environment. So what I've been doing is looking for other opportunities to lower tariffs or improve margin, and then ensure quality. But most importantly is to ensure the supply chain can function from movement of material, storage of material, payment for material, and then quality of material. So all those are processes that can be redesigned and probably will have to be redesigned with the way the government is impacting industry.
Yes, we're hearing from some people are not affected depending on the industry, and other people are seeing cautious buyers where they're putting in orders as little as they can until the market stabilizes and prices become more of a firmer proposition. Because right now everything seems to be shifting from day to day, week to week, or in some cases hour to hour. So,
Yep.
not a good stable environment. One of the things, and I told you offline before we hit record, you mentioned, and I told you I would ask you this, that you've always talked to me about the role of a CFO and what it should be, and there's a lot of misconception or misapplication of the role. I would love if you could clarify your vision for that. What's your the right way to execute in that?
Yeah. So I think the CFO role has certainly been evolving almost every month since March of 2020, COVID.
Oh, sure.
Because they're usually dependable, they're usually risk adverse, they're usually data-driven decision making, and they're usually prompt to ask questions or answer questions to help the good of the organization. So the role has changed, and it's not your bookkeeper anymore. It's not your, not all, although it's still important, cash flow reports, balance sheet, income statement, variance reports. Yes, super important to do. Sometimes that gives you a rear view mirror, which sometimes is okay. But now as a CFO, former CFO, I always wanted to be proactive. How do I be proactive in my role to anticipate risk? And it's not saying the sky is falling every day, but it's getting out, talking to associations, talking to my peers, talking to my suppliers, and then learning from my customers. So I think it's okay to attend functions where you're out of the office so you can have those frank discussions, because you need, as a CFO, you need that information because sometimes it gets filtered internally. So I think it's important to treat your CFO as a And I think a lot of them are for sure, and maybe some of them aren't. But how do you give that CFO a little bit of latitude, not to improve their technical skills? I mean, I'm taking a AI course for CFOs. It'll be 12 months. So I'm currently taking that. So I want to improve my technical skills, yes, but I also want to improve my ability to read the market, the ability to read the economy, the ability to read my customer anxiety. Yeah, I could see lines on a graph, but do I really feel my supplier anxiety and my customer anxiety? And can we work together to come up with a solution that is going to allow my shareholders or my stakeholders to maintain their expectations on return? And who's going to give and who's going to take, because it'll all even out eventually. So, but if you don't have a CFO who's willing to come out from the office or bring the customers to them, I find it incredibly rewarding to have a customer roundtable or a customer lunch in the office.
Nice.
So I think it's super important that they're not just your bookkeeper, they're not just your banker. Bring your bank into the office, bring your insurance company into the office. They all have knowledge about what the industry is doing because they deal with the same industry customers that you are in.
Right.
They're not going to reveal a competitive advantage, but they are going to reveal is macro trends, which can be useful to you to help determine cash flow, to help determine or prep your board on margin plays or margin compression or product availability risks. So I think it's important to let that happen.
Yeah, including, correct me if I'm wrong, but investment opportunities
Yes.
that you might otherwise miss.
Yes.
So transition from reporting to being proactive and seeking out the information that's going to bring financial health, competitive advantage to the organization. With engaging with outside parties and information and what have you.
Yes. Yeah. I think information is power. And, our parents had the luxury. I don't want to say it was a luxury because I'm sure it wasn't, but every economic cycle was 14 to 17 years. Today, it's every 3 years. And what do we do 2 years from now when the president of the United States gets reelected or there's a major reelection somewhere? We're kind of stop the presses. Let's anticipate what they're going to do. Let's listen to the pundits and the experts, get some input, and that'll determine if we're going to invest in this for 2 years from now. Yeah. Well, so it's kind of a not fair. We are constantly changing, continuous improvement, be flexible, have that disengagement so you can think clearly. So being able to assess risk. I mean, we as manufacturers, I had the luxury of coming out of a banking or a finance industry where we assessed risk and we went. Manufacturing, we're kind of, a little bit risk adverse because we don't want to change because, we don't know how that impact. We can't anticipate that ripple effect.
Right.
And we are risk adverse. So
yeah,
get your banker involved, get your insurance provider involved, and let them discuss the risks with you and powwow. Make that plan to say, this is a risk, but this is a low risk. You use a FEMA, failure modes and effects analysis.
Right. Yes.
Put it on a sheet and rank it.
Yeah. And anticipate what could go wrong. What's the solution? Yeah. What's the risk? What's the impact? The severity of the impact, and then rank it.
Yeah.
So no, thank you for that answer. I'm down to a couple questions here in closing, but can I ask you? Is there one of these? You don't have to answer one of each. Just one. either a mentor, a lesson you learned from a mentor or a book, or maybe a quote that was influential to you as a leader. Can you share, and then why? What's the meaning? What's your interpretation of that quote or influence or value?
I'll tell you right now, the first one I encountered was that video of a customer saying, "I'm the customer, treat me like the customer." And then having that being supported by the Sewell Way, I think the book was called. So that customer was always one. Number two is execute. Execute. And that doesn't mean, forcing people to do something they don't want to, or just absolutely grind, execute. Plan that execution out. You know when something's going to happen. So back to planning up 3, 4, 5 months. So customer, who's the customer? Execute, that would be Jack Welch.
Very nice.
Third thing is name to be undisclosed, but empathy. Have empathy, because everyone puts this, pair of pants on, or their shorts, or whatever clothing article you have, one arm at a time. And understand that people come from all different walks of life and all different experiences, and understand that your speed of change, your engagement, your inputs, everything's super important. Not one person, especially post-COVID, can control everything. Not even some of those great companies and those individuals out there that we see in the press. You still have to consult with somebody behind the scenes, or get input from your customer, your teammate, your coach. So
very good.
Yeah.
And I think the theme of this conversation has been the value of the voice of the customer, and it's resonated tremendously with me. So I thank you for this. I really appreciate your time and the countless nuggets of wisdom you've shared and dropped here. If anyone listening to this wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, or my email address. My personal email address is Stephen with a V .Ramel, RAMEL @gmail.com.
Very good. Steve, again, thanks so much. Always a pleasure connecting with you. Enjoyed it. And thank you so much again for your time. And if you're listening to this and you have, stories to tell, you have ideas to share, would love to have you. Please reach out and we can feature you in one of our growth talks. And that's all for now. We'll see you next time. Thanks again, Steve.
Yep. Thank you, Dan.